This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody. I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and as always, I would like to remind you guys, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, make sure you're always on top of when we drop stuff, make sure you never, ever miss an episode. If you could please as well give us a 5-star rating and review. It's very helpful. It allows us to see what you guys like and didn't like. And then also, if you guys are on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you are, we are. So like I said, just come find us. We can talk, we can debate, we can discuss different things. And speaking of discussing things, boy, did that Zion debut give us a lot to discuss and dissect and talk about. I mean, I was not old enough, or I am not old enough to remember that much about LeBron's debut, but this has got to be one of the most anticipated NBA debuts in a long time, in my personal opinion. I mean, Zion is a guy who has set the sports media, the sports world in general, ablaze the past couple of years. I know he gained a lot of popularity and social media fame and went viral a few years ago when he was doing all those in-game dunks and all those dunks in games. Those all kind of went viral. Then obviously that fame followed him to Duke, and has just followed him to the summer league and then the preseason. And then obviously he got hurt before the season started, so then we had to wait. I mean, obviously the NBA the NBA ratings were not happy about that, as they put the Pelicans on a lot of national TV games. And though they weren't as good because they didn't have Zion in there, but now Zion is back. And that game from him on Wednesday night against the Spurs was very interesting because of the discussions that it caused. I mean, in the first three quarters, let me just put it that way, the first three quarters, you could see that this was a guy who hadn't played basketball in a while. He was still trying to work himself back, trying to figure out where he fit himself in, and people reacted accordingly to that. People were calling him a bust. People were like, "Oh, he's not in good shape. He's overweight. Blah blah blah. Whatever. All types of overreactions, which tend to come from social media. I mean, that's what social media basically is. I mean, if there was no overreaction on there, it would cease to exist. But so that's the good and the bad thing about it. But then came the explosion, if you will. I mean, 3 minutes of game time. The man rattled off 17 straight points, and I mean, I can't imagine because I wasn't obviously there in New Orleans, but I could only imagine how loud that building was after that 4-3 went in for Zion. I mean, you probably would have thought, I mean, seeing from some of the stuff I saw on Twitter, you would have thought that was Game 7 of the NBA Finals, the way they were reacting. But, I mean, that's the thing, when you have a guy like Zion, he can bring that sort of excitement and energy to a fan base that very few people can. I mean, there have been a lot of things for NBA fans to get excited about throughout this season, whether it's the play of LeBron and AD together, whether it's the emergence of Luka as one of the best players in the league, whether it's the highlights from Trae Young, the highlights from Ja Morant, who we will talk about in the next segment. But I mean, collectively, that 3 minutes is probably one of the best moments of this NBA season so far. I don't know what that says about Zion, and I don't know what that says about the NBA season this far. But I mean, it was I mean, not want to say shocking, because I mean he's a great player, but it was almost kind of jaw dropping that you were like, what am I watching right now? I mean, if you just run through, and I mean, it's a shame that the Spurs won this game, and really no one cares because of what Zion did. But I mean, that's the case of Zion. He's going to be the bigger story most of the nights. But like I said, in his first game, he hadn't really done much of the first 3 quarters. Then I think when I noticed something really started to click, which was before this play I'm going to talk about, he had an assist to Josh Hart the play before. So there's the assist. The Spurs come down. Patty Mills misses a 3. Zion skies over Jakob Poeltl, who's like a 7-foot-tall center. Easy, clears him like it was nothing. Like he had been playing for 2 months at this point. Like you wouldn't have thought it was his first NBA game. Skies over him, grabs the rebound, pushes the ball up the floor, passes it to Etwan Moore for a layup, and you're like, oh, okay. Or no, not for a layup, for a shot. And you're just like, oh, okay. That's kind of what we've been waiting to see. Just like, because Zion is a guy for the kind of build and the athleticism that he has. He's a pretty good distributor, and that was showcased throughout the game. Unfortunately, they weren't always able to knock down the passes when Zion, his teammates weren't always able to knock down shots when Zion passing the ball. But you could see that even not having played for a while, he still had a good overall feel for the game. So that was a good play for him to get the layup for Etwan Moore. And then after that is when the scoring barrage started, and when it started, it couldn't stop. I mean, he shoots the first 3 on a sense for Lonzo, and you're just like, oh, okay, that's big, because if there's one thing that we know is that generally in this league they're going to make you prove that you can hit jump shots, especially if you're a guy that's not known for hitting jump shots. And Zion wasn't really a guy. He's the guy that shot them at Duke, but that wasn't his thing. He was known for the athleticism, the dunks, rebounds, block shots, stuff like that. He wasn't known for the 3-point shot. So they're going to force you to shoot that. So that was big for him to knock down the first one. Then Spurs go down, score again. The Pelicans get the ball back. They run a nice little fake, Zion was going to go up to the top of the key, spins back, and Lonzo lobbed it up for him. He skied over DeRozan again, just showcasing that athleticism that everybody marveled over and everybody's been waiting to see. And then obviously we saw that it's still there. So then that came down. Then after the Spurs hit another shot, Zion comes down, gets another pass from Lonzo. It's another 3-pointer, and you're like, oh, okay, 2 for 2. That was big, and I think this was right at the time where this was right at the 7:53 mark. So you could see that they were trying to sub him out because they brought us up to the table, and then I think this might have been around the time where Lonzo. This might have been around the play where Lonzo, Alvin Gentry tried to call a timeout, and Lonzo just was like, no, we're not doing that. And then that's when they tried to get the sub. It didn't work. They ended up bringing him back to the bench because obviously Zion was feeling himself now. And then the Spurs came down, missed a shot. Zion gets another rebound. He gets the ball again, tries to lay it up, gets it blocked, but then he gets the ball back, goes up with a quick second jump, puts in another layup, and that's now, what is that, 10 in a row for him at that point? Yeah, so 3, 6, that's 10 in a row. Might just cut the Spurs lead down to a 10-point lead. What was a 10-point lead, now down to 3. They give up a layup on the other end, the Pelicans do. Then Zion comes down, hits his third 3, and then so that cuts to 2. There's some substitutions. They get a steal, and then Zion hits what's it called? Zion hits LaMarcus Aldridge with a mean jab step, and then pulls back for the 3. Hits his 4th 3, scores his 17th point in a row, and it was just absurd. I mean, like I said, the whole arena was going crazy. Social media was going crazy. Everybody was just going crazy, and rightfully so, because this is even though it took him 3 quarters and change, he gave everybody exactly what they wanted to see, which is just something to be excited about. Because that's all you can really have him do. Is just provide people a reason to get excited, and that's exactly what he did. And it was exceptional to see. I mean, clearly, I didn't know that all of a sudden, if you hurt your knee, you come back and you start shooting like Steph. That was news to me. But regardless, it was like I said, it was just an impressive feat. And then unfortunately, some of the conversation went to that right after that is when he got taken out. Right after the 4-3, I think they go to timeout, and then they take him out. Or maybe they went to timeout after Bellinelli hit the 3. No, take that back. So Bellinelli hit a 3, then Zion gets fouled, misses the 1 free throw, makes the second one, then they give up a layup, and then that's what they call the timeout. And then Zion wasn't seen again the rest of the game. And that's kind of where the discussion went. Was because it was like everybody on social media was like, oh, leave Zion in, he's playing well, he's doing well, but then obviously the medical team, the medical staff, the Pelicans front office had decided that, A, he was only going to play how many ever minutes, and then even, as Alvin Gentry kind of talked about after the game, because I was ready to come on here and skewer him for making that decision, it sounds like it was above his head. The medical staff had already decided, like, hey, look, he's only going to play such and such amount of minutes, and then we're going to hold strict to that. And then obviously, like he talked about, for them to even be able to get him extra time was already more, because like I said, they tried to sub him out about like the 4-minute mark into the quarter, which is where he'd been getting subbed out all game, and he was able to buy an extra 2.5 minutes in order to keep himself in, because again, he was playing so well, they didn't make any reason to take him out. But at the same time, then obviously he got taken out, didn't come back in, and then that was that for his night. So the one thing I will say about the thing that was unfortunate is that for him, it's just that in my own personal opinion, sometimes we can overthink things as people. And now I understand that, like, oh, you don't want to strain the guy in his first game back. Completely agree. I would not have advised him to play the whole quarter. That would have been extremely stupid. But at this point, I think at that point because he only played 18 minutes total in the game, which was 2 more than they probably wanted him to play based on the way that they were subbing him out. But it's like, if he had taken a 3-minute break, because the game was still close, the Pelicans still could have won. I understand it's just a game in January, so it doesn't mean that much. But, like, and also, Alvin Gentry said he had no soreness, had no issues. So I'm like, do we really think 2 more minutes would have then set his knee off? Or just set anything, like he could have rolled an ankle, whatever. I'm just like, do you really think that 2 more minutes would have been that detrimental to his health? And maybe you do. Maybe, like I said, I'm not privy to the data or the information that the Pelicans medical staff has that caused him to make this decision. So I'm ignorant in that regard. Maybe if I knew that information, my opinion would be different. But because I don't, and I'm just an outsider looking in, I'm like, as long as he, like, that's the thing, is that, like, you have to communicate with these athletes. If the guy feels good and looks good, like, again, it's not like he was late, like, by the fourth quarter, it's not like he was laboring up and down the court, it's not like he was struggling to get off his shots, he was struggling off the dribble, like, he was actually playing well. So, like, if he feels good and he looks good, I think you can extend that grace period, but I give them credit for being, for sticking to their game plan. Because it would have been very easy to just be like, for Alvin Gentry to go over to the guys and be like, hey, he's playing well, can I leave him in? And they'll be like, you know what, yeah, let's see how it goes. They were like, no, this is the plan, this is what we're going to stick to, and cool. Now, while I wasn't happy with it, and I don't necessarily agree with it, just because, like I said, the risk of injury is always apparent whenever you're playing in a game, whether you're coming off injury or you're fully healthy. There's always a risk of injury to playing in a game. And also, I mean, he's a guy that's going to work himself into shape by playing. He's not going to work himself into shape by getting 3-4 minute spurts here and there at the beginning of each quarter. It's not. I mean, obviously he'll gradually get there, but it'll take longer if he's the less time he plays. So, like I said, I'm a guy that just, like, if the guy feels good, just let him play. Obviously, I'm not saying play him 30-40 minutes. That would have been stupid. But, I mean, if you were that worried about him even playing 20, then it's like, all right, could you in theory have kept him out longer until you could get to that point in the medical staff's estimation? Just because I'm like, I know they said that on the broadcast they mentioned about how he could have been back earlier, but they didn't have enough practices in order to get him back into shape. So that's why I took until now to get him back. And I mean, that's reasonable. But I'm like, you could have saved him till like after the All-Star break, until February or whatever, in order for him to get to where he could play more than 4-minute intervals in a game. But that's just my own personal opinion. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how he looks on Friday. I think that's when their next game is. Yeah, they play the Nuggets. They play the Nuggets on Friday, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And they play Sunday, Tuesday, Friday. So no back-to-backs. He'll always have at least one day, if not 2 days off in between the rest. So we'll see how they gradually decide to increase his minutes, and then how he looks in those increased minutes. But like I said, if the debut was anything like what we could potentially get from him, I mean, the Pelicans are going to be a good team, not just now, but in the future as well. Like I said, and he's going to be a big part of that. So that debut was great. It's, like I said, it's everything you could ask for. You wanted to see some excitement from him, see some good plays from him, and that's exactly what he gave us. So that was great. And obviously, like I said, now it'll at least make those Pelicans national TV games more worthwhile than they were, because Brandon Ingram's been playing well, but I mean, before the season, people weren't tuning into the Pelicans to watch Brandon Ingram. No offense to him, he's played great, but Zion's a star. Zion's box office. He's the guy that people are going to want to see. And now that we get to see him, so we'll see how he plays throughout the rest of this season. And speaking of Zion and his coming back, he's now joining. Well, now that he's back, he's joining a rookie class that's played pretty well without him so far this year. There's been a lot of exceptional play from different rookies on different teams, and we will talk about those rookies and their seasons so far right after this break.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So as we were talking about in the last segment, Zion's back, and that brings excitement to this rookie class, but there were players playing very well in this rookie class without Zion, in the sense that, like, not that we'd forgotten about Zion, but there were enough rookies playing well to keep our attention until he got back. And one of those players was another person that hails from South Carolina, a former AAU teammate of Zion's, and that is one Ja Morant. Now, Ja Morant has been, he's a number 2 overall pick, so I'm expected to be pretty good, obviously, and he's been just about as good, if not better than advertised. Zion doesn't really count because he only played in the one game, so he's technically first in points per game, but Ja Morant, up until Zion came back, led our rookies in points per game with 17.5. He leads all rookies in assists with 7, and the next closest guy is Darius Garland at 3.6. He also has 3.4 rebounds this year per game. He's shooting 80% from the free throw line, 40% from 3, and almost 49% from the field. And that 3 percentage, he's only shooting about like 2 per game, but still 40% for anybody is good, but obviously especially for a rookie, because normally the shot is maybe something that can take longer to come along just as you get acclimated to the game. But he's done that well. Again, we'll see how he holds up throughout the rest of the year, but he's been he's been great, and he obviously has the Grizzlies in contention for a playoff spot. And I mean, that is not something I believe many people had pegged them for. I know I definitely wouldn't have assumed they were going to be good enough to compete for a playoff spot in Ja Morant's first year. Now, in fairness to that, they are still under 500, and I think the team in 8th right now is the Spurs, I believe, and the Spurs are also under 500. So it's not like they're exactly setting the world on fire. But I mean, even still, only 4 games under 500 is not bad at all. I mean, especially when you think about last year, they were picking number 2, and they've been pretty good recently. I mean, yeah, they're 7-3 in their last 10. I mean, they lost their last 2, so that kind of dropped them up. But they had the longest active win streak in the league before that. They had won 8 in a row. Coming into their recent spurt. I mean, they're losing streak, and Ja Morant's been the driving force kind of behind that and behind the play of this team so far this season. I mean, him coupled with Jaren Jackson Jr., who's been playing great, and Dillon Brooks, who's definitely taken a step up this season, have helped. So it's not Ja Morant just doing everything by himself, but I mean, he's obviously been the main guy, the driving and kind of like the catalyst for this big improvement for them. And on top of all that, I mean, he's providing us with basically nightly highlights. I mean, every night there's a new. You get something, whether it's him going to dunk on somebody, like he did with the. I mean, even like the plays where they don't work out, they are still impressive. Like the Kevin Love dunk from like a little while ago, where he basically almost cleared him. It looked like Vince Carter a la Frederick Weiss in the Olympics. And I mean, yeah, that was impressive. You have the play a couple of games ago where he went up for the dunk. I think it was against the Cavs too. On Larry Nance, went up for the dunk, didn't realize it wasn't going to work. Then went to a no look behind the back pass in midair, spinning 360, throws it behind his back to Jaren Jackson. Unfortunately, Jaren Jackson isn't able to complete the layup. He gets it blocked, but. Just that, he had the alley-oop in that same game, the one-hander just coming up above the rim, just throwing it down, looking like it looked like a young Derrick Rose-ish, maybe Russ, but obviously with a better jump shot at this point in his career than either of those guys had coming in. And I mean, he's like I said, he's been great. He's been fun to watch, and he's got his team in playoff contention. Which I mean, as a rookie, there's not much more you could ask for from him. And like I said, he's lived up to expectations. There are high expectations for him coming in, and then obviously with no Zion, there are going to be a lot of eyes on him, seeing how he plays, and he's played above and beyond as well as you could hope for, at least at this point. And I think the biggest thing for these rookies is just to see how when and if that rookie wall hits, because I know that's a big thing just to see, because they're not used to playing this many games, not used to all the flights and the road trips and stuff. So we'll see how he holds up. But I mean, he's the guy that's been exceptional for this season. Not just, I mean, especially for a rookie, but just overall as a player, he's been great. And another rookies, if you will, that have been playing well have been Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn for the Heat. I mean, we talked about them a little while ago, just in terms of the surprise teams this year, with the Heat being one of the big surprises. I think they're now, I believe they're up to second in the ranking and then and the standings in the East now. Nope, they're up to second. They're 31-13, one game ahead of the Raptors who are 30-14. I mean, obviously there's 7.5 games behind the Bucks, which, I mean, the Bucks are the best team in basketball, so it's no shot at them. But like I said, the Heat have been great this year, and a part of that obviously was the addition of Jimmy Butler, but also has been the play of their younger players. And I mean, just think about Hero. I mean, he's been a big addition for them. I mean, just in this last game, he set the rookie record for threes in a game with 7. I mean, he's had other games with 6 and 5 this year. So he's been great. He's been a key contributor for that team. That's all you can kind of hope for as a rookie. Just like have them come in and play and play big minutes and contribute. I mean, you draft these guys in the first round, you draft these guys in the lottery, you want them to come in and add something to your team right away, and he's added that with his 3-point shooting ability. I mean, shooting 40% for the year, which again is good for any player, but it's exceptional for a rookie because you think they wouldn't be able, or not all of them are always ready to get off that good start as a rookie, just because, like I said, the defense is tougher, the guys are more athletic, guys are more physical, the line's a little bit further back, so that affects some people, but it hasn't affected him at all. Shooting 40%, 85% from the free throw line, only 42% from the field, so he could get his 2-point shots up a little bit. But yeah, he's got four rebounds, 2 assists a game. He's been big. He has been, like I said, a vital part of their team, as has another rookie, Kendrick Nunn, for them. I mean, he's another guy that's been a very big contributor, and he was obviously a much less heralded guy. Obviously, as he came, he was undrafted, spent some time in the G League, all that fun stuff. But yeah, no, he's another guy that's really stepped in and played a big role for them. He's second on the team in scoring. I think he's second in rookies in scoring as well, with 16.2 points a game, 3.5 assists, 3 rebounds. He's shooting 46% from the field, 36% from 3, 80% from the free throw line, and he's a guy that's been a starter. He started every game for the Heat. Obviously, Hero's been a guy that's come off the bench and started some games. He's only started 3 games this year, but he's mainly come off the bench. But Nunn's been a guy that's been in there since the start of the season, and he's just settled into that role nicely as a starter alongside Jimmy Butler. Like I said, yeah, he's been great, and obviously that the play of him and the emergence of him has been a big part of the reason for their success, because I know Dragic was out for a while, and they needed somebody to kind of help fill that guard spot, and he has been the guy that was able to hold the position down, and now Dragic isn't even starting anymore. He's coming off the bench because, like I said, he's been playing so well. It's like, why would you take him out? So yeah, so those are 2 guys, and then another guy who hasn't had the numbers, whose numbers aren't as good as Nunn and Hero, but has been playing better recently, especially since he's been getting more playing time as a rookie, is Michael Porter Jr. I mean, he's a guy, again, who was a very high, I think it might have been the number 1 prospect coming out of high school. Somebody double check that. You can fact check me on that. Don't quote me. I'm not 100% sure, but I know he was definitely one of the top prospects, and obviously he had the injury as well as he was at Missouri, which caused him to drop in the draft. And then he sat out all of last year, though. From what it seems like, and kind of some of the things I've read and I saw, was that obviously the Nuggets were so good last year they didn't really need him. So it was like, all right, there's no point of bringing him in late into the season just to kind of add him in. But now he's playing, and he's playing pretty well. I mean, he hadn't been getting major minutes to start the season, but now if you look at some of his recent games, since he's been getting more minutes, I mean, they've seen big upticks in his production. Like, say, so before they just lost to Houston the other night. So the last 4 games before that, he was getting all over 20 minutes a game, multiple games with 27 or more minutes, and he's been responding. He's given them, in those 4 games, he's given them 19, 18, 10, and 20. Had another game with 25 points a season, another game with 19 points a season. So he's a guy that, like, if he can continue to add and continue to showcase the skills that had him ranked as the one of the top players in the country, as he continues to get more minutes for the Nuggets. I mean, that's kind of really all they've been missing the past couple of years. It's just been a small forward that can consistently score. I mean, obviously they have Jokic, they have Murray, they have Gary Harris, they had Paul Millsap. I mean, Will Barton had been good for them. but it was like they needed kind of like that was only a spot really where they were kind of they didn't have like an above average player, and not to take anything away from Will Barton or Torrey Craig or anything like that, because Will Barton's been great this year. He's averaging 15 points a game, but I'm just saying if Michael Porter Jr. can be a guy that can give them that 15 to 20 points a night, I mean, that team becomes even more scary than it already was. I mean, anytime you have a guy in Jokic that can be a walking triple-double, I mean, he's a center that leads the team in assists, which is unheard of. But I'm saying, like, they could be even better. I mean, they're at the 4 right now, but they're only a game back of the 2 seed, only 5.5 games back the Lakers as a whole. So it's like if he showcases even more from the All-Star break on, Michael Porter Jr., I mean, there's sky's the limit for that team. There's no place there's no telling where they can go, and obviously this will be great for them because they have a lot of their pieces are pretty young. Like Millsap's really the only older guy on their team that gets a lot of minutes, and I guess Barton's not that young either. But like Jokic is young, Murray is young, Gary Harris is young. Jeremy Grant is young. Morris is young. Beasley's young. I mean, Plumlee's not that young either, but I mean, he won't be around too much longer. Like, Millsap's 34, and Barton is 29. But like Jokic, Murray, Harris, Grant, Morris, Beasley, Porter Jr., all those guys are in their 20s, and like mid to early 20s too. So it's like that team could be set up to be one of the. I mean, they've already been great the last couple of years, but I'm saying if Michael Porter can be that guy that they drafted him to be, and he's shown flashes of that this year in limited playing time, and again, like obviously they seem to be willing to give him more and more playing time recently. I know he didn't play in the last game against the Rockets, which hurt, but if he's the guy, and that's going to be the key point, is can he stay healthy? Because if he can stay healthy, I mean, like I said, sky's the limit for this Nuggets team and where they can go and where they can potentially end up this season and then in the future. But that was the knock on him coming into the league, and that's obviously going to be a knock on him until he can dispel that. It's just the injury concerns, and I think he was out for the back. So we'll see how bad it was, see how much time he misses. But like I said, he's been great, and like overall, this rookie class has been pretty good. And then obviously we're getting Zion back, so I mean, it's only gonna increase from here, and just in terms of what these guys have done and haven't done, and what they can showcase on a nightly basis. So it'll be fun to follow these rookies throughout the rest of the season. So, coming up after this next break, we are going to talk about a quarterback that announced his retirement, or announced he's going to retire. So, you guys will be hearing this on Friday. So, by the time you hear this, Eli Manning's press conference for his retirement may have already happened. But due to that announcement, that led to the interesting question of, is he in the Hall of Famer? And I think I mean, if you're a Giants fan, it's easy. If you're a Giants hater, it's easy on both sides of this. But this may be one of the toughest cases for a Hall of Fame career that we could have, and it might have lasting effects on the Hall of Fame if he gets in. So we'll talk about my opinion on that right after this break.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, Eli Manning. I mean, he's got to have one of the most polarizing Hall of Fame cases, arguably ever. I mean, at least and from the time I've been watching football, which is the last 20 years or so, I can't say much about the older cases, but I know Joe Namath got in, and I mean, look at his numbers. But, he got in. All more power to him. Not going to slight him. But, I mean, he's just the interesting case of what if you were, relatively, I don't want to say average, that's not the right word. What if you were, alright for most of your career? Except for when your team needed you to be a Hall of Famer, then you were a Hall of Famer. Now, you look at his regular season numbers, obviously the big thing was the record. He was 117-117. I mean, there was a chance he could have been under 500 if they didn't give him that one last start before Daniel Jones came back. You look at his yards. I mean, he threw for 4,000 yards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Not bad. Only threw for 30 touchdowns 3 times. A little shaky. And then obviously the interceptions. He had double-digit interceptions every year but this past year, which, I mean, barely counts because he played in 4 games, and even then he still had 5 interceptions. And then his rookie year, when he only started 7 games, and he still had 9 interceptions. Every other year he's had double digits. He's had multiple seasons with over 20 interceptions, multiple seasons with over 15 interceptions. But, I mean, you look at, guys like Brett Favre, I mean, he has a lot of interceptions too, so it's not like, I don't want to strictly hold the interception stuff against him. I mean, yeah, he has, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he had 6 seasons with 20 interceptions, and he only had 2 single-digit interception seasons, and the one was when he played in 2 games his rookie year in Atlanta, and the other one was a really good year with the Vikings, where I think this is the year they went to an NFC Championship game. Yeah, it was. And then, he threw 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions to Brett Favre. But yeah, I mean, obviously different era. He started in the 90s. The league became a lot more pass happy in the 2000s. Then obviously he has more Pro Bowls and all that stuff. But, I mean, it's just an interesting case of, if you look at the regular season numbers, you're like, all right, they're cool. Nothing too special. I mean, like I said, he only made 4 Pro Bowls. You could argue there weren't really that many years where he was within the top 5 at his position. I probably think 2015 is probably his best case. We had 4,400 yards, 35 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Probably his best case for being in the top 5 at his position. I think, yeah. So, it's interesting. But it's just that, alright, but then you go to the playoffs, and you could say, and you look at it, he has 8 playoff wins. Excuse me, good amount. I mean, in fairness, in every other year he made the playoffs, they just lost in the first game. So that's interesting. Just how did he only manage to win managed to win playoffs in 2 separate years, and that's it. Every other year of his career, because he's played in 12 total playoff games. He's 8-4, so he's made it 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 6 times. 4 times he's gone one and done, and then 2 times he's won a Super Bowl. But I think when you look at that, that's kind of where you have to. That's kind of where it comes in, because if you look at those runs he went on. So the first one, they beat Tampa. In the wild card round, and this is the first year. This was a 6th seed this year, so they barely snuck into the playoffs. They're on the road all these games. They're at Tampa, beat them. Then they played Tony Romo and the 13-3 Dallas Cowboys. I mean, obviously a division opponent, but they're at home. This was a really good team. They had T.O. and all that stuff. So this was a team that was supposed to beat the Giants. They weren't able to do that. Then he goes into Green Bay in freezing cold temperatures. Throws the ball 40 times. I mean, only 21 of 40, but still threw the ball 40 times in freezing cold temperatures. 250 yards, wins that game in overtime, drives them down the field to set up the Lawrence Tynes field goal. And obviously we know what he did in the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously people will say, like, oh, the defense won that. It was only 17-14, blah, blah, blah. Yes, the defense played great, of course. But Eli still had 2 touchdowns in that game, including the game winner to Plaxico Burress, and obviously he had the helmet catch, which, I mean, when you look at Hall of Fame careers, you need to have Hall of Fame moments, mainly in the playoffs, because that's where it's always discussed. Like, that's when it matters the most. Is like, we always talk about how important Super Bowls are, how important rings are in sports, and how people are judged by that. Except for when a guy that you don't really like that much gets one, and then now you try to rationalize like how we got it. Like, it's not like this isn't like these years weren't like this wasn't like Peyton Manning's last year in Denver, where it was like clearly he was not what he once was, and he was kind of just along for the ride. The defense carried them. Like, no, Eli had to go into hostile environments and play well in these games in order for them to win. I mean, I didn't talk about it, but even in that Dallas game, he had what was it? He had 2 touchdown passes in that game. I think overall in his 2 playoff runs in those 2 years, he threw 15 touchdowns and 12 not even 2 interceptions. I mean, that's great. Which is, again, what you ask for your quarterback when you get to the playoffs. And then if we're going to talk about the second playoff run, and also you got to remember that first playoff run, that the Patriots came to that Super Bowl 18-0, going for the perfect season. He ended that. People thought they were a surefire Super Bowl champion that year. Didn't happen. Then the next year, they didn't have to go on the road 3 games. Only went on the road for 2 of the games. They beat Atlanta 24-2 in the first round. Then they went into Green Bay, beat the 15-1 Packers with Aaron Rodgers. Probably, I mean, statistically, I mean, record-wise, probably Aaron Rodgers' best team. And he was great in that game. 21 of 33, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Outdueled Aaron Rodgers, prime Aaron Rodgers. Then he goes on the road in San Francisco. I mean, was he aided by some muff punts by Kyle Williams? Yes. But also, I mean, this game, he was just getting beat up. I mean, he got sacked, 6 times, threw the ball almost 60 times. Only had 300 yards, still had two touchdowns. And they won that. This is another game they won in overtime. So he's won multiple games in the playoffs in overtime. I mean, again, he didn't throw a game-winning pass in this one, but it was just Lawrence Hines kicked another field goal to give them the win. I'm pretty sure this one was set up by a muff punt by Kyle Williams in overtime. So, I mean, that had nothing to do with Eli, but he still put his team in position to win the game. And then obviously go into the Super Bowl, play the Patriots again, beat them again. Don't have a helmet catch this time, but you just have probably easily one of the top throws in the Super Bowl ever. And then probably one of the top throws just in general all time into that Mario Manningham on the sideline in the fourth quarter. Because that's just like, if it's a little bit to the left, Mario Manningham probably goes out of bounds. If it's a little bit to the right, it probably gets it probably gets batted down or deflected or maybe even picked off. And if he throws it any softer, he doesn't get there in time and it's deflected. And if it throws it any harder, then he might overthrow him. So it was literally like, that ball was literally the only place you could put it in that scenario. Again, this is fourth quarter Super Bowl, big moments, big time. And he delivered, like I said, he delivered twice. And it's just one of those things where it's like, once, you can call it a fluke. Like, we've seen Joe Flacco go on a magical run, win a Super Bowl. We've seen Nick Foles go on a magical run, win a Super Bowl. We've seen Trent Dilfer win a Super Bowl. We saw Peyton Manning last year win a Super Bowl. Like, we've seen subpar quarterbacks win Super Bowls before. But twice, and win Super Bowl MVP both times, is like, all right, now you can't just call it a fluke, in my opinion. Like, I know some people are comparing, like, oh, he's just Joe Flacco, if Joe Flacco did it again, or like, say if Nick Foles comes back and wins another Super Bowl, then he basically has Eli Manning's career. And to both those things, I will say, one, Joe Flacco, I mean, you never know, but as of this moment right now, Joe Flacco has not won another Super Bowl since he won it back in, I think this was like 2012-ish, somewhere around the early 2010s. And then Nick Foles just spent this year getting benched for a rookie. And not like Eli benched, where it was like this was probably going to be his last year regardless. Like, this is they went out and paid Nick Foles big money to be the starter, and it didn't work out. So, and also Nick Foles never started 16 games, never been a starter for a prolonged period of time on any team that he's been on, whether it's the Rams, Chiefs, Eagles, Jaguars, everywhere he's gone. I mean, basically, anywhere he's gone that wasn't the Eagles, he hasn't been that great. And then when he's been with the Eagles, he's only been great for, like, short periods of time. Like, he had the one season, 27 and 2 year. Not that his fault, but they did lose in the playoffs in the first round. The next year, he was kind of injured. I know he ended up getting injured, so he didn't even play all 16 games. And obviously, the Super Bowl year, he wasn't that great the last 3 games of the season, then was good for the Vikings and in the Patriots game, and he was all right in the Falcons game. I mean, if Keanu Neal catches a ball that instead doesn't try to catch a ball with his knee, tries to catch it with his hands or with his chest, then we look at Nick Foles entirely differently. So, I'm saying, is it easy because again, when you think about the playoffs, it's like, basically you have to play good football for like max 4 games. So it's like a month. It's like a month. You have to play really well. Can mediocre quarterbacks get hot and play well for 4 games? Yes. But mediocre quarterbacks don't do that twice. That's my only thing. And they don't do it twice and then also win Super Bowl MVP of the Super Bowls twice. Because I think he's one of, I believe 5 guys to do it, and the other 4 are Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Terry Bradshaw, and Bart Starr, all guys that are in the Hall of Fame, or in Tom Brady's case, are going to be in the Hall of Fame. And then obviously the Eli Manning kind of stands out in that group, but it's like, all right, this is rarefied air to be able to do this. And I'm not necessarily a big Eli guy. I never thought he was really that good. I'm not really a big Giants guy, but it's just that, like, when you think of the Hall of Fame, it's supposed to be signify the memorable players where, like, if you take them out of the history of the NFL, is there something missing? And whether people like it or not, if you take Eli Manning and those Giants teams out of the history of the NFL, then there is something missing. Because they were up until 2017, they were the first and only team to beat the Patriots in a Super Bowl. I mean, obviously, the Nick Foles doing that kind of hurts that legacy a little bit. But again, I guess you would say he's the only one that's done it twice. He's the only person that's beaten Brady twice in a Super Bowl. I mean, it's hard to beat Brady twice ever in over the course of his career. I mean, Peyton Manning, as you saw, struggled with that in the playoffs, and Eli did it twice on the biggest stage against arguably the best quarterback ever, the best coach ever, the best dynasty in the history of the sport. Like, that's not an easy thing to do, and that's something he was able to do. So you have to give him some level of credit for that. And I think that credit will be him making it into the Hall of Fame. Now, like, this is because we talked about the Hall of Fame and how I feel about the way the voting process is done. That's the weird thing. Is he like a first ballot, like, no doubt Hall of Famer? No. That's probably why he probably won't get in on the first ballot. Though, I mean, people like him, so he actually might. But it's just like the weird scenario where it's like, all right, like how long does he have to wait to get in? Because again, his numbers are going to change. His numbers probably only going to drop down. I know he's top 10 in yards and touchdown passes, but by the time he's eligible for the Hall of Fame, he might be even further down the list with guys like Matt Ryan and Matt Stafford and a couple other guys still to finish out their career. Maybe even like a Phillip Rivers to see where he ends up over his career, or where is he? I don't know where he's at right now on the list. But yeah, like Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford, those kind of couple of those Aaron Rodgers, like those kind of older quarterbacks that are, I mean, surpass that, and then that might drop his stats down a little bit. So that'll be interesting to see. But at the same time, it's hard pressed for me to take a guy that's won 2 Super Bowls, won 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and not put him in the Hall of Fame. And again, had memorable moments in both of those, and in one of those beat the greatest team, arguably, ever. But definitely the greatest dynasty of the last half century in football, maybe in all of sports. The greatest coach and the greatest quarterback in all of sport, in all of football. I mean, again, I would. You could, like, it's the weird thing. Could you make a song of an argument for him as against him? And I would need to hear your argument against him for why you're going to leave him out. But I'm just saying, if it were so easy for mediocre quarterbacks to do what Eli's done, then more mediocre quarterbacks would have 2 Super Bowls with 2 Super Bowl MVPs, in my opinion. I mean, you look at guys like Aaron Rodgers, who are great, and have only been to one Super Bowl ever in their entire career. You got Peyton, how long it took him just to even get to the first one, and how even long it took him to get back to another one. Drew Brees has never been to one. Never been to a second one. So yeah, so if it were so easy for people to go and win 2 Super Bowls and 2 Super Bowl MVPs, then more great quarterbacks would have that. That's why there's only 5 quarterbacks that have ever won multiple Super Bowl MVPs. It's not that easy. And Eli's one of them, and I think it's just one of those things where you kind of have to give him credit for that. But Eli's retirement may start off a offseason that could feature a lot of quarterback movement, whether that's retirements, whether that's quarterbacks switching teams, whether that's quarterbacks being traded, what have you. There's a lot of uncertain quarterback situations around the league coming up this offseason, and we'll talk about some of those right after this break.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So now, if we take a look around the league, like I said, Eli is announcing his retirement, so that Giants situation is squared away. You don't gotta. Daniel Jones took his spot already, so we knew it was going to be the starter, but we didn't know maybe Eli would be a backup. Maybe he'll go somewhere else and be a quarterback. That's not going to happen, so he's just going to bow out of the game gracefully. But that was not the only that wasn't the only quarterback move that we were going to set to potentially have this offseason. I'm just going to take a grand old look around the league, and you could just see the uncertainty at the quarterback position across all divisions in both conferences. Case in point number one, the Patriots. Now, Brady sounds like he wants to come back. I know Kraft wants to bring him back. We'll see how badly Belichick wants to bring him back. Because obviously, it wasn't necessarily his fault because the receivers weren't that great, but Tom did not look like his normal Pro Bowl best quarterback in the league self, or one of the best quarterbacks in the league self, this past season. So it'd be interesting to see how does Belichick and Kraft handle that, and then if they do in fact show him the door, where does he end up? Because there are a lot of teams that could potentially use the services of one Tom Brady. So the Patriots just one example. We got the Dolphins, obviously in that same division, who could be an option. I know it would be interesting to see if they've unfortunately, they tried to do this tanking thing and then they won too many games in order to tank for Joe Burrow. But I know that they seemed like they liked Tua before the season, and obviously he's still going to be available this year, just obviously with the injury, more injury concerns, if you will. So it'll be interesting to see how they feel about him, and if they end up staying at 5, I believe they're 5. They end up staying there and drafting him, or if they try to trade up to number 1 and get Joe Burrow, though it doesn't sound like the Bengals are going to trade that pick. And if I'm them, I understand why. This is a completely different segment that we could talk about another day, but I'm always a believer of get the quarterback. I understand you kind of want to build the team before you get the quarterback, but if there's a quarterback you believe is better than everyone else, there's no reason to pass up on that just to get more draft picks. So that, as good as that is to have more shots, more lottery tickets, if you will, there's just as much chance that you are going to miss on more players, as opposed to, at least if you miss on the quarterback, you only miss on the quarterback. If you miss on those 3 picks, you miss on those 3 picks, and then obviously you've seen in the past couple of years teams that have traded up. The draft hauls that teams have gotten back from those picks in terms of the players that they end up picking haven't necessarily been that great. So I wouldn't miss that. So then, like I said, you got the Dolphins, see what they can do. I know Philip Rivers is moving his family down to Florida to be closer to his extended family. So I'd be interested to see if they're going to want to have Tua sit for a year. All right, maybe you could bring in a Philip Rivers on a 1-year deal. The little stopgap situation. Who knows? Going through the AFC more, you got the Raiders. I mean, they're moving to Vegas. Is Derek Carr going to be the face of the franchise there in Las Vegas? He could be, but no one really knows how John Gruden feels, and obviously they didn't have the greatest season, finished 7-9. The Chargers, obviously, it seems like they're going to move on from Phillip, and that's a team that has been rumored. Just speculated. I don't want to say rumored, but there's been speculation about that could be one of the teams Tom Brady could go to because they have a lot of pieces around the quarterback position. They kind of struggled this year mainly because Philip Rivers was throwing a lot of interceptions. So if Brady wanted to leave to go to a team that could still contend, that might be a team up there. You go through the AFC North now. You got the Steelers, who knows what they're going to do with Big Ben. I mean, I imagine he's going to try to come back, but who knows if he'll ever be right. I mean, the elbow was a weird thing to test just because, like I said, it's very important to throwing. So if that elbow's not right, then he may have to either sit out more time or retire. And then if he does have to sit out, do the Steelers draft a quarterback. I mean, they can't even draft a quarterback here. They don't have a first-round pick because they traded for Minka, which, in fair, good trade, but still. I mean, that's the only thing they were missing is a quarterback. And I'm just like, you can't go into next year with uncertainty at Big Ben and just Mason Rudolph and Doug Hodges. That's what they did this past year and it didn't work. So you need to do something else. So it's like, is that a draft? Is that a trade? That'll be interesting to see. And then Bengals, obviously, we think they're going to draft Joe Burrow. No one really knows what the Bengals are going to do. I mean, it would make sense. He's from Ohio, went to school in Ohio before he went to LSU. Cincinnati's in Ohio, so that would be the connection. There's so many connections there. And they have number 1 picks. They don't even have to worry about trading up or going up to get them. They can just literally stay where they are and draft them. That's another team that's going to have a new quarterback, whether it's Joe Burrow, they trade back and get Tua or Justin Herbert or like Jordan Love, Jacob Eason, somebody. I don't know. They're gonna have a new quarterback. They're gonna draft a new quarterback. And then also that leaves Andy Dalton. What are they gonna do with Andy Dalton? They're just gonna cut him. Are they gonna trade him? Is he gonna be like a backup somewhere? Is he gonna go somewhere and be like a stopgap starter? I don't know. And then you got the AFC South, where you have 3 teams outside of the Texans that have interesting quarterback scenarios. I mean, obviously with the Titans, they were just in the AFC Championship game with Ryan Tannehill. Now, can they do that again with Ryan Tannehill? I don't know. Maybe they believe they can. I'm not saying they can't, because again, they got this far, but I mean, this kind of, sort of... No, I was going to say it feels like the Jaguar situation with Blake Bortles, but Tannehill played a lot better than Blake Bortles did. Though, if you look at the playoff games, Bortles actually, he had that really good game against the Steelers in the divisional round. And so, but in the regular season, Tannehill was a lot better than Bortles was, but also Bortles didn't. Maybe, if anything, I think that might have been rookie. That might have been rookie year Fournette. No, second year Fournette. So, and obviously in Tennessee had Derrick Henry, who's a free agent, so they'll have to bring him back. But yeah, I'm interested to see. So do they give him a 2-year, 3-year deal with some chance to get out of the deal if he's not that good this year? Do they just franchise tag him? Do they give him a full 5-year extension for... he's not going to get top-line quarterback money because Mahomes is getting an extension this year and Deshaun's getting an extension this year. So he's not going to get that kind of money, but he's still going to get something if he gets a big extension. And then obviously you got Mariota, who believes he's still a starter. Many people believe he still can be a starter. So where does he end up? That'll be interesting. The Colts with Brissett. I mean, obviously the Andrew Luck thing caught them by surprise. Brissett started out the year good, but kind of tapered off there towards the end. So there's no certainty that he's the surefire answer there in Indianapolis. So maybe they're the team that drafts a quarterback. And then you got the Jaguars, who again, pay big money for Foles. End up going with Minshew to end the season out, and they have a new offensive coordinator now. They hired Jay Gruden. Still got Doug Marrone, but just new offensive coordinator, so we don't know which quarterback Jay Gruden likes. I mean, Jay Gruden's designed good offenses for Andy Dalton and Kirk Cousins over his career. I mean, he had Washington in the lead for the NFC East before Alex Smith got hurt last year, so he knows how to scheme up a little bit of offense. So it'd be interesting to see who they go with, if they trade Foles, or do they keep Foles and then have Minshew be the back, or just have them fight it out. And then if whoever wins, if maybe Foles, I don't know, he's getting paid a lot of money. So it'd be interesting to have him just be a backup there. And then if you switch over to the NFC, you got the Dak situation with, in terms of, I don't think he's going to officially hit free agency, but he is a free agent, or he's going to be a free agent. The Cowboys, for whatever reason, didn't get a deal done. And now it's interesting because he just had a great year. Obviously didn't lead them to the playoffs, but had a great statistical year. And you're going to have guys like I said, Mahomes and Deshaun Watson getting contract extensions this year. I mean, obviously he's not going to give Mahomes money. He knows he's not at that level, and everybody knows that. But, I mean, you could argue he's at Deshaun Watson level. I mean, they both won, one playoff game in their careers. They both made the playoffs a couple times, both won their division a couple times. And obviously then you already saw guys in his class, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz already got paid. So he's going to at least want more than that. And then just obviously with most of these new deals, they just get more and more money. And then, like I said, he's totally free. So it's not like you even have, like, with guys like Mahomes or Deshaun or Goff and Wentz, they're doing the contracts early. Dak's going to be, he's a free agent now. And then if you don't give him extent, then you franchise tag him, then what kind of message does that send? Because now you're saying you still don't believe in him after you had him basically on a 1-year prove-it deal this year for nothing. Now you can give him another 1-year prove-it deal. And then, so that just looks a little iffy in terms of their commitment to him at the quarterback position for that team. Washington's a team with a new head coach, new offensive coordinator. We'll see if this could be a Josh Rosen situation all over again, how much they actually believe in Dwayne Haskins. I think they'll probably keep him, but you never know. No, MC West, everybody's solid, even though depending on how you feel about Jared Goff, that could, I mean, he's going to be there because he's got extension, but, like, if he has another bad season, they're going to be needing a new quarterback soon. The Lions, I mean, Matt Stafford's there, but there have been some rumblings about how serious his back injury is, and then if that's the case, then they're going to need to draft a quarterback. Whether it's, like I said, they might be in the Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Jacob Eason kind of situation. I don't think Jake Fromm's that good, but you know they could pick him too. Like they could be a team that's looking for a quarterback, maybe not at 3, or maybe even they're at 3. They could get to if they wanted to. If I mean you can't have 2 injury prone, you can't have 2 injured quarterbacks on your roster, but I mean maybe you can. It's the Lions. They do things that sometimes don't make sense. I mean all teams do, and I'm not just gonna pick on the Lions, but you know it's the Lions. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see if maybe even they pick Tua. Because like I said, they'll be in position to because Washington's probably going to go Chase Young. So they could pick him, or they could trade back for somebody that wants to pick him and then get a haul of draft picks. Like I said, they could need a new quarterback. The Bears, they sound like they're sticking with Mitch, but as many Bears fans have expressed, they're not really that happy about that because, again, they could have had Deshaun Watson, could have had Patrick Mahomes, and they have neither now, which is unfortunate for you Bears fans. I'm sorry out there for you. But yeah, I mean, Mitch is going into year 4. He's probably not going to get an extension, probably not going to get the 5th-year option picked up. So, see, do they bring in like a Mariota? Do they bring in a Cam? Do they bring in a Nick Foles, a Teddy Bridgewater to compete with him for that job? I would just be shocked if they just give Mitch the job outright. They're going to bring somebody in to compete with him. But who? So that'd be interesting to see where that goes. Then, speaking of Teddy Bridgewater, the Saints have Teddy and Drew Brees are free agents this year. I mean, Drew Brees, if he's going to come back, he's going to be there. So that may not be that much movement, but then, hey, you don't know. Maybe he decides to retire. Maybe he wants to move on somewhere. Maybe Sean Payton's like, I think we've seen the best from you. Maybe he wants to roll with Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, they were 5-0 this year with him as a starter. They lost the first game he came in against the Rams, but as a starter, he was 5-0. So, or maybe they have a lot of faith in Taysom Hill. I don't know what Sean Payton thinks. No one knows what Sean Payton thinks. So that's the team. You got Falcons with Matt Ryan. They could be looking for a new quarterback soon. I mean, Matt Ryan's not getting any younger. I think he's like 35. Obviously, the team struggled the past couple of years, so they have one more bad season. They're probably going to start to think about moving on from them if they haven't already. If they haven't already started to do so. Then you got the Bucs with Jameis, who put up gaudy numbers, but also threw 30 picks and had a lot of fumbles. So you can't win football games like that where your quarterback's turning the ball over at an alarming rate, and no one turns the ball over more than Jameis, really. So it's like, what do you do with him? Do you give him another 1-year deal? Do you franchise him? Because he put up great numbers, but the turnovers have only gotten worse, which is, you would think it'd be reversed. Like, as you get more time in the league, it would get better. That hasn't happened yet, but that'll be interesting to see what they do with him. And then the Panthers. I mean, we already talked about Cam Newton's coming off injury. They have the old LSU passing game coordinator / wide receivers coach as their offensive coordinator now. They have a head coach that came from college. So he's seen some of these college quarterbacks. He may have guys that he likes and guys guys he might have his eye on. And again, no one really knows how healthy Cam's going to be. So you can't just bank on him coming back and being healthy. So it's like, hey, do they draft a quarterback? Do they trade for a quarterback? I mean, you could argue at almost... I mean, if I count through the teams, I mean, I'm going to take out the Saints and the Patriots just because as of right now, I think both their quarterbacks stay with their team, but you're going to look at 1, 2, 3, and a possible... A possible, and the Titans, you got Dak staying, Lions possible, Bears possible, Falcons gonna successor, Bucs possible. Like, you have at least 12-ish teams that have question marks on what they're gonna do at the quarterback position coming into offseason, which is unheard of. Like, most teams, like, all right, you have the bad teams and you have a couple teams with the old quarterbacks. You're not really sure, but there's like legitimately, like, and if you, I mean, especially if you include the Saints if you include the Saints, Titans, and Patriots in that, there's even more teams with uncertainty on not just necessarily who's going to be there, but just what they're going to do with him. Are they going to give him a big deal? Like, if you're Tom Brady or Drew Brees, do they just give them a 1-year deal? Do you give him a 3-year deal? Same with Tannehill. Do you franchise him? James, do you franchise him? Like there's just a lot of question marks, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out through the rest of the season. I mean, as we know, unfortunately, the NFL season is coming to an end, but that means draft season is soon to be upon us, and that means the offseason is soon to be upon us, and that means free agency is soon to be upon us, and then we'll have all kind of juicy stuff coming out. So, it'll be interesting. I think the quarterback movement this offseason is something we will have to keep our eyes on, just because it may be one of, if not the most interesting storyline of the entire NFL offseason. At least in my opinion. But yeah, so speaking of the draft, speaking of the end of the NFL season, that means the draft's coming up, which means the Combine's coming up. But there's an event that happens before the Combine that took place this week that I think is even more important than the draft Combine, and some scouts and executives may agree with that. And I'll tell you what that was and why I think it's maybe more important than the draft, and more important than the Combine, right after this break.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So the event I'm talking about, if you don't know or you don't follow college football as much, is the Senior Bowl week. And the reason why I like this event and why I feel like it's important just because it's different than the Combine in that it's not just shorts and t-shirts. It's not like the underwear Olympics, as some people call it, where you're not going to see people run through, go through their 40s. You're not going to see them do a bunch of drills against air. Like, it's people doing football things against other football players. And I feel like that gives you a good idea of how these guys are going to match up, because in theory, these are the guys are going to be having to play against at the next level. Because I mean, the one thing that kind of detracts from is the fact that it is only seniors, so it doesn't include like some of the great underclassmen that are coming out this year. But still, there are enough good seniors coming out to where they always fill up this game. They always have high profile guys out there, and this is a good showcase for a multitude of reasons. But one of them is because it allows smaller school guys to showcase that they can handle playing with the big boys. Like in past years, they've had guys like, I know Carson Wentz went through this when he was a senior, and then that's when obviously his draft projection skyrocketed, and then obviously the Eagles ended up trading up for him to get him at 2. The Senior Bowl, though Dak he was played in the SEC Power 5 conference. But he played at Mississippi State, which isn't necessarily known as a football powerhouse per se. But the Senior Bowl is where the Cowboys got to see him, watch him up close, get to know him, ended up being beneficial for them, ended up for being able to draft him. Although I would like to point out that they tried to trade up for Paxton Lynch and Connor Cook in that same draft. If you look at reports out there before they ended up getting on Dak, so let's not give them too much credit for Dak. But obviously he showed himself well enough to at least be on the Cowboys' radar during this week, and then obviously other stuff after that. This is the first showcase for that. I mean, it gives guys who who were a little lower on the production scale during their years. Like I know a couple guys last year that kind of really used this game to help boost their draft stock. Daniel Jones. I mean, he was a guy who some people had ranked high, but I mean, other people thought he was going to be like a second-round pick, had him graded out as a second-round pick, and then the Senior Bowl week is when Dave Gettleman obviously was able to go see him, because I think he had talked about how he wasn't able to go to many Duke games, which, I mean, fair enough, I understand. Duke's, again, not a big football school, so you're going to see other high-profile prospects as opposed to going and spending a weekend at a Duke game, unless you're going to see them play like Clemson or somebody. To watch some of the Clemson players. So he hadn't seen him, so he was able to see him up close and personal at the Senior Bowl week, be able to talk to him, be able to communicate with him, see the way he interacts with other players in the huddle, be able to interview him, stuff like that, and that's obviously where they must have fell in love with him. And then you see you have drafted him at 6, and he looked pretty good this year. Guys like Terry McLaurin, who had a great rookie year, but kind of didn't have the big gaudy stats that some of the other receivers coming out had. But he was a guy who showed up in the Senior Bowl week, showed out, and then obviously that helped boost his draft stock, and then you see him continuing to show out throughout his rookie year. I mean, obviously he had cycled through different quarterbacks, had some injuries, but like he was a great rookie receiver when he was out there. Deebo Samuel, who'll be playing in the Super Bowl, is another guy who had a great week at the Senior Bowl. I know he had some injuries, some concerns coming in, and then obviously again South Carolina, their quarterback position was a little hit or miss. But this was a week for him to showcase his ability, and I remember reading up on him. He was killing it that week, and then obviously it's translated over to the NFL. That probably boosted his draft stock a little bit, got him on the Niners' radar, and then obviously they picked him when they were able to utilize him right. Montez Sweat was another guy I remember who, out of Mississippi, was he Mississippi? I think he was Mississippi State as well. Obviously a couple years after Dak, but I'm pretty sure he was Mississippi State. And he was a guy that I remember just seeing clips of him just dominating people during the Senior Bowl. Yep, Mississippi State. I remember seeing him just dominate people during the different clips that you see posted up on social media during his Senior Bowl week. and he was the guy who was good in college last year, as a senior. No, it was good his last couple of years, actually. Let me not say that. After he transferred from Michigan State to Mississippi State. He was good his last couple of years, but he wasn't like a big, highly regarded prospect until, like I said, 2018 when he was first team All-American, and then obviously he was able to come to this, show out, and then that was able to get him even higher, and then also get the combine stuff with this 40 time and all that stuff. And then so those are four guys. And I think this kind of week is just better than the combine. I feel like why people think it's better than the combine is just because this is not necessarily like football. You train for football, but when you're going up, when they're doing the one-on-ones with the offensive lineman versus defensive lineman, or they're doing the one-on-ones, corners, receivers, or safeties, tight ends, or running backs, linebackers, stuff like that, like there are only so many drills you can do to prepare against going up against one-on-one against another NFL caliber player. Like you can train to get a better 40 time, you can train to do well in the shuttle, you can train to do well in your vertical. The different drills they may put you through to work on the throws or whatever, but there's only so much training you can do in order for football. And when you got to go man on man, I mean, obviously it's not full 11 on 11 until the games, but like the different drills, 1-on-1s, maybe some 7-on-7, some team stuff. Like there's no special workouts or special training regimen you can go through to put that to be ready for that. That's a good, like, it's nice to be able to go mano a mano, guy on guy, kind of see how everybody handles it. See how smaller school guys play against bigger school guys. See how bigger school guys play against other bigger school guys. Like maybe, I mean, even when you go to a top school, like you're only playing so many great teams, like a couple a year, in theory. And so then you have a chance. And then even if you're a guy who wasn't utilized maybe properly during your college years, you're able to showcase like, hey, I can do this, I can do that. And I mean, it's still the case this year. I mean, you see guys, some of the guys that have had boosted their draft stock up a little bit from just reading an article on NFL.com. You have guys like KJ Hill, who could be this year's Terry McLaurin, Ohio State guy, who didn't have gaudy numbers his last year, but has come to the Senior Bowl and had a great week. You have a defensive tackle and Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina, who, even though this is the thing where the game doesn't really matter as much as the week of leading up to practice. Because again, you're playing with guys you never really played with. There's going to be miscommunications, there's going to be errors during the games, but the drills, that's where you can really showcase your skills. And he's a guy that was dominating the drills, dominating the offensive lineman. Even though he left with an injury, he's a guy that's boosted his draft stock up a week as long as the knee injury isn't that serious. You have another offensive lineman in Josh Jones in Houston, who is a guy who's maybe a smaller school guy, but is going up against Power 5 pass rushers, defensive ends, edges, stuff like that, and he's been able to showcase himself. Different guys like Michigan has a guy in Josh Uche, I believe, a pass rusher on the edge who's been able to showcase this guy. I've even seen him do some dropping the coverage, cover tight ends and stuff 1-on-1 in drills, showcase something maybe he didn't have to do that much at Michigan. Just see like, hey, I can do this too, show off your versatility and stuff. And then another big thing is that like another scenarios that allows like the smaller school guys. Like I know there's a tight end out of Dayton, Adam Trotman, I believe, who obviously like I said played at Dayton, so he wasn't playing against the highest level of competition, but he still put up 900 yards, 14 touchdowns this past season. So he can come to this and showcase like, hey, I'm just as good as any other tight end out there, tight end prospect out there. And it sounds like he's had a good week. I know the Bears are looking for a tight end, so I know there's been a lot of reports of them talking to him. Other receivers like who was the Liberty guy, and I think what's his name, Antonio Goldie, Antonio Gotti Golden. Again, he's a Liberty guy who has gaudy numbers, put up 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns this season, again at Liberty. But this is a big week for him to be able to showcase like, hey, like I can run. I'm not just dominating smaller competition. I can play with the big boys, and that's why I like the Senior Bowl more than or that's why I think more people like the Senior Bowl than the draft combine, just because it's not just a bunch of guys going through drills and then we're throwing passing running routes against air. You're going against other NFL caliber guys who are all competing for a spot in the league just like you are. So they're all hungry. They're all willing to prove it. And then this is your chance to showcase your skills. And then this is obviously can get you on the radar. So when you come back at the combine, another big thing for that is the first height and weight measurement that these guys have for you cutting into the offseason. So you can see from here, you know how tall or how short guys are and how much they weigh. You can see, all right, did this guy work during his training for the combine? Did he lose weight? Did he gain weight? Stuff like that. And obviously, then the pro days are just, they're even more glorified combine because you're in a comfortable setting. You're throwing to receivers and stuff like that. And again, it's in shorts, it's in a t-shirt, unless you want to do, I know Johnny Manziel did his in shoulder pads, I believe. I think Baker might have did his in, I don't know, more quarterbacks are doing theirs with shoulder pads on, which, you should. You throw with shoulder pads on. You don't throw in a t-shirt. But, yeah. Senior Bowl is a week and is an event that isn't as heralded as much as the draft combine. But I think, and you could honestly argue, and if you listen to certain draft scouts and executives and stuff, they honestly believe it's more important than the combine is because, like I said, many people just view the combine as a glorified underwear Olympics. So, like I said, it's over this weekend, though. If you're not doing anything on Saturday, I think the game itself is being played on Saturday. So you can watch that, see some people your NFL team may soon be drafting. But even just in the future, just to keep an eye out for this, because you can see sometimes the success of the Senior Bowl translate into the NFL. Like I said, with McLaurin, with Deebo Samuel, Montez Sweat, Daniel Jones, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, other guys throughout the years that have been at the Senior Bowl and have gone on to have good careers in the NFL. You can start to see the beginnings of that at the Senior Bowl. So if this is an event that you watch, I assume you're going to keep watching. But if it's an event that isn't necessarily on your radar, maybe you can find a time to tune in. It's like the last weekend. It's one of the last weeks in January every year. I think it's like right before the Pro Bowl. So you'll just keep an eye on it for next year. And then, like I said, you can start to see some guys that maybe you didn't know about before and start to pop up on your radar. And then so now you're not surprised when your NFL team drafts them. So, like I said, that's an interesting debate just to see which one's more important. But and like I said, speaking of debates, the NBA, switching gears here to another sport, the NBA All-Star teams, starters. All-Star starters were released tonight, this being Thursday night. And there were some people that were put on, or some people that left out, that had some people questioning some things. So we'll talk about who the starters were on East and West, and how I think they did, and how I think the voting went with the teams, and also how the voting may go with some of the reserves right after this break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
So, like I said, if you didn't know, the NBA All-Star starters were released tonight, being Thursday. The reserves will officially be released, I think, next Thursday. I'm pretty sure. So we'll see the team we'll know the team in full by next Friday. But like I said, for the starters, for the West, it was LeBron, who's the team captain, Anthony Davis, Kawhi Leonard, Luka, and James Harden. Now, in my opinion, on that side, I think they got it right. I mean, Kawhi was an interesting one just because he's missed some time, but then when you look at the other forwards out there, though, I mean, I guess it kind of depends. I mean, Luka is a small forward that plays point guard, so you kind of have to view him as a guard, and he was voted in as a guard, so that's kind of why you can kind of sneak Kawhi in there. But other than that, I mean, I think it makes sense. LeBron, no doubt. Anthony Davis, no doubt. Luka, no doubt. James Harden, no doubt. Even though he's kind of struggled recently, he's still leading the league in points score and in points per game, I believe, with 37. I think he's still at right now, so he makes total sense. That one, like I said, that all makes sense. But the interesting ones to me are, and again, I talked about this before, how the fan voting for the All-Star game, how it needs to be taken more seriously and how people don't take it serious. So you look at a guy like Devin Booker, where you can look up the voting results ballot, and it'll list the fan rank, like where they ranked in the fan voting, the player voting, the media voting, and then their weighted score is kind of like, once you average all of them out, like where they end up. So you got a guy like Devin Booker, who is 6th in the guards with a weighted score of 6.0. But so if you take, I'm going to get to his fan rank in a second, but in his player rank and in the media rank, he's in the top 4 for guards, and rightfully so. I mean, again, we'll get to the East in a second and how they decided to break, and how the media and the players decided to vote for that one. But Devin Booker's having a great season. He's averaging 26, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. I mean, again, not necessarily his fault that the Suns stink, but again, they do. So I think people are holding that against him, and the fans are definitely holding that against him. But I mean, you could argue he could have been an All-Star the last 3 years, where he's averaged 24.9, 26.6, and then 26.5 this year. And he's up in last year, he had 6.8 assists to 6.3. He's shooting 90% from the free throw line this year, 36% from 3, 50% from the field. And he might not make it because of the fan vote. Because you know where he ranked in the fan vote? 8th. You know why that happened? Because they were voting for guys like Alex Caruso. Again, this is why I had the issue with the fan voting. And I mean, we'll get to the players in a second because they don't get it right all the time either. Voting in these All-Star games is just all kind of out of whack. But if the fans took the vote more seriously, then more people would have voted for Devin Booker as opposed to voting for Alex Caruso. And he wouldn't have ranked 8th in the fan voting, because there's no reason. He's not the 8th best guard in the league. Like, he should be much higher than that. I mean, Alex Caruso doesn't even end up making it on the final list, because again, he shouldn't. But I think he was at least in the top. I know he was I think he was like 6th or something like that for the fan vote, and it's just like, you mess it up for guys like even Donovan Mitchell, who's been great and has helped the Jazz get up to the second seed now in the West. He was 7th in the fan voting because, again, they just have to vote for Alex Caruso and Steph for that matter, because Steph was 6th. That's a problem. Yeah, I think Caruso was 4th in the fan voting. Like I said, Steph was 6th, and both those guys were never going to play in the All-Star game. Obviously, Steph because he's hurt, and Alex Caruso because, I mean, in fairness to him, he's just not an All-Star. But those votes and those teams, people voting for those guys, hurt guys like Devin Booker, like the Donovan Mitchells of the world, who may miss out on a spot may miss out on a reserve spot by one player or so, just because their fan vote wasn't high enough to get them a better way to score. Like I said, if Devin Booker, he's 4th in the player vote and 4th in the media vote. I mean, well, tied for 4th with a lot of guys in the media, which is, I don't know how that works. Because in the front court guys, there's actually a real ranking. But whatever. He's 4th in the player vote. So his weighted score would be a lot better if he wasn't so low in the fan vote. So again, that's why then we need to strip fans of their power. But yeah, though, like I said, there's no one really, I think, that should be on the list that's off. Though, another interesting one was Karl Anthony Towns, who I know he's been hurt a little bit, but again, that it didn't hurt guys like Kyrie, who, like I said, we'll get to the East in a second. But he's a guy who ranked, I think, 9th. He ranked 9th in the fan vote, 13th in the player vote, and 8th in the media rankings, that is. And he's a guy, again, he's missed some games, but I mean, Kawhi's had out games, Paul George's had out games, and he's averaging 26 11-4. And again, the Wolves are the Wolves good right now? Not at all. But that's not what the All-Star. You can worry about records and stuff for MVP, All NBA teams, whatever. All-Star game, just the best players. Whoever's having the best season, no matter how good they are. I mean, like I said, didn't hurt. We'll swing over to the East. It didn't hurt Trae Young. The Hawks are one of the worst teams in the league. He voted in as a starter. You could argue, should he have been? Maybe, maybe not. But he's having a great year. He's top 5 in points and assists, I think. So I'm completely fine with him making it in as an All-Star starter because it's not about his record. All right, is the team bad? Yes, but that's not his fault. He's doing his best. He's doing everything he can, try to get them some wins. And there are many games I've watched where just like he'll be the only one being able to score, and everyone else will just be doing just wanting to be able to hit shots, and then you're wondering why they're not winning games. So. Yeah, so he was one of the starters. Kemba was not a surprise, but like I said, the Kyrie situation, I'm going to see how that went. But yeah, so he wasn't. And then Giannis, who's the captain, Joel Embiid, and then Siakam, who I know some people were mad about Jimmy Butler not making it, and I can understand it because Siakam and Embiid have both missed some time this year, and Jimmy Butler has his team in the top 4 seed in the East. But, I mean, people forget how good... before Siakam got hurt, he was a legitimate MVP candidate. And then, obviously, when... I know the Sixers and Embiid have had their ups and downs this year. But, you could argue that Embiid's the best big man when he's healthy. Though, I mean, qualifying when he's healthy is a big thing. And also, in fairness to Siakam... his numbers are a little bit better. He has more points. He's averaging 23 points to Jimmy Butler's 20. He's averaging 7.7 rebounds to Jimmy's 7. And then obviously Jimmy has him in assists. He's at 6.5, which Siakam only has 3. And he's played in 5 more games, which isn't even that much. I thought it was going to be a lot more than that. But yes, he's only played in 5 more games. So like I said, Siakam was a legitimate MVP candidate before in the first month and plus of the season. So I'm not mad at them giving it to Siakam, though. Obviously Jimmy's going to make the team, but I could see why some people weren't happy about Jimmy not making it. But then, again, this is where I get back to the... So I bashed on the fans for their voting and the way that they vote and how they don't take it seriously, but the player voting for the guards was absurd. I mean, they had Bradley Beal ranked 2nd of all guards. Ahead of Trae Young, ahead of Ben Simmons, ahead of Kyrie, ahead of Zach LaVine, ahead of Kyle Lowry. And the media has him 5th. Again, ahead of Zach LaVine. And a spot below. Ahead of Kyrie. And a spot below Kyle Lowry. I don't know why people have Kyle Lowry that high. No one wants to see Kyle. I mean, Kyle Lowry's a great player, but he's not the All-Star game type of player you'd want to see. You want to see guys like Ben Simmons, Zach LaVine. Stuff, even a Derrick Rose, maybe in an All-Star game. Kyle Lowry, he's been great. He got his ring. He's got his All-Star games. This might not be the one for him. But yeah, so back to what I was saying. So the player rankings. In what world is Bradley Beal the 2nd best guard in the league? It was absurd when I saw that. So all right. So Bradley Beal is having a great season. I'm not trying to bash him. 27.5 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, 6.3 assists. But shooting-wise, he's shooting 44%, 31% from 3, shooting almost 8 threes a game. Not ideal. And he's shooting 84% from the field. I mean, from the free throw line, excuse me. But like I said, that 3-point percentage for a guy that's generally pretty good, his lowest year before that was 35%. He had 3 years over 40% from 3. To have such a down shooting year, and obviously, again, he's on a bad team, which didn't hurt him. But then if you look at a guy like Zach LaVine, who the games played in Chicago, he's averaging 25 points, 4.7 rebounds, 3.8 assists this year as a league guy. And his team's better than the Wizards. And he's shooting 83% from the free throw line, 39% from 3, shooting the same amount of attempts that Bradley Beal has at 7.9, and 45% from the field. So I'm just like, how in the world is... And then, like I said, just look up Trae Young numbers for fun. Just because I'm... He's averaging 29 points and 8.6 assists and 4.7 rebounds. And again, does his team stink? Yes, but that's not his fault. But yeah, in what world... I understand Bradley Beal's having a very good year on a team that's not really that great. But, like, how in the world, like, who does... And again, I think the only person he was behind was Kemba. Which, again, he should be behind Kemba, but it's like... Am I missing something? Maybe I'm missing something. You guys can tell me if I missed something. Has Bradley Beal been that good this year in order to be the second best guard? And that's significantly upping his weighted score. Because he was 9th in the fan vote, which, understandable. But like I said, fans don't always get it right. But how in the world did the players vote to have him second for the guards? That was one of the biggest shocks to me, was Bradley Beal had a player ranking that high. And I mean, again, players can't watch all the games; they're playing the games. And like the media had it more reasonable at 5. I think that's probably where he might be, is like 5 or 6. But I'm just like, they ranked him ahead of Ben Simmons, like I said, Lowry, Trae Young, Kyrie, Derrick Rose, Zach LaVine. Like, it was like, whoa, okay, that kind of caught me off guard. I don't know if he'll make it in. And I mean, I still believe Zach LaVine should probably make it in, even though Ben Simmons is a little bit low. And I'm just like, again, that's the fan vote. So like I said, the voting for his All-Star games is kind of shoddy. But regardless, the starters are out. You can talk to me about if you think anybody got snubbed or who you think may get snubbed from the team eventually. Because I think there's going to be some tight races for the last few spots. Because I think they only pick, 7 reserves? Yes, if you just take these top 4 guys, top 4 guys left in each position. One of Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, Bam Adebayo, Sabonis. I'll throw in Drummond for fun. Kyrie, Derrick Rose, Lowry, LaVine, Ben Simmons, Bradley Beal. A couple of those guys aren't going to make the All-Star team. Which, again, is kind of shocking. And if you go to the West, the West is more reasonable. I think they'll probably get in everybody, but like Chris Paul, who's been a good player this year, might not make it. Karl-Anthony Towns, again, who's having a good year, might not make it. Brandon Ingram, who's had a good year, might not make it because they might want to put Melo in. Even though he's having a good year, not an All-Star caliber year, but he's having a good year. But they might just give him like the farewell All-Star game selection like they used to do like they did for Kobe his last couple of years. Be like a John Morant, who's been really good this year, might not make it. So yeah, there's going to be some tough decisions. There's going to be some guys that are definitely going to be snubbed. So we'll definitely talk about that next week when those teams are officially announced. But that'll do it for me here today on the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you guys for listening. Once again, as you guys always do. If you haven't already, I'm going to remind you guys again, subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you're always on top of when we drop stuff. Make sure you never miss an episode. If you can please give us a 5-star rating and review, it'd be very nice, it'd be very helpful. We would greatly appreciate it. And as always, if you're on social media, you're also on social media, you can find us Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you are, we are. You can find us there. We can debate things there. You can tell me why Bradley Beal should have been an All-Star starter. You can tell me why Eli Manning isn't a Hall of Famer. You can tell me which rookies I should have put in my I should have talked about more outside of, like I said, Morant, Nunn, Hero, and Michael Porter Jr. Maybe I missed some guys. You're more than welcome to tell me that. But yeah, as always, I've been Chris Blades, and once again, like I said, I want to thank you guys for listening to another episode. And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.